All right, I'm Keshav. I'm a programmer by profession. I think I do it pretty well, but I'm sure my colleagues would disagree. Um, and before I start, I have a request.
Can I just
Before I start, I have a request. I have two important guests in the audience today, my wife and my daughter, so I would request you to not heckle. Okay, impact-driven development. Back in 2012, this was kind of the thought process in my family. We decided that Melbourne is a safe and a great place for us to live and bring up our daughter. So we were thinking, okay, we can't even buy a toilet in Melbourne. So there's no point in renting if we want to live here. And the only way we could think of buying was selling what we have in India and come back and buy here. So, and at the same time, I wanted to do something that made a difference. And my wife wanted to take a break. And we also wanted our daughter to see how we grew up because she mostly was brought up here. So, and probably was under the assumption that everybody in the world grows up with an iPad, which is not a great thing. So we decided to go to India for a year or so. We booked the tickets. I didn't know what I would be doing, but I started looking for what to do for a year, and I came up with these guys. These are the founders of Logistimo, Anup and Arun. Anup is also from Johns Hopkins, which is where I went to school, and Arun was an employee of Yahoo, and they came together to start Logistimo. I'll tell a bit about Logistimo, how it all started. So Anup is a supply chain wizard who was a supply chain advisor for US Army in Iraq. And during the Iraq war, he saw things that disturbed him. So he wanted to renounce his US citizenship when his parents, who are Indians, convinced him that he can change something in India. And he moved to India and started Logistimo to solve a very simple problem, which is making healthcare available for everyone. It's a simple problem, but very hard to solve in third world setting because most of the time there is not enough data to make decisions. And even if the data is there, it is not in a format that is really helpful to do anything. Like these are formats that things like Apache Spark or any tool will not be able to understand because it looks like that. So you just can't do anything. So we decided, okay, we're going to solve the problem by empowering the people at the last mile, which is all the public healthcare workers. This may not mean much to you guys because supply chain is not everybody's cup of tea, neither was it mine. This is what we wanted to do. I want you guys to take a look at it for 2 minutes and see why it is important. In a setting like India or South Sudan, when a mother carries her child and walks 10 kilometers to vaccinate her child, if the vaccination is not available, that's depressing. And that's what we wanted to solve. So we decided to build something like that. So I know a lot of you might have not seen a phone like that. It's called a feature phone. We wanted to build J2ME app and give one phone to every public healthcare worker so that you can monitor the data and the availability of vaccines and essentials drugs. So this is the project for which we won $100,000 from Bill Gates Foundation, and our CTO started working on the J2ME app, and I was parallelly building. So the app looks like that on regular feature phones, and I started working on an Android version of the same thing. So we built the app for like six to 8 weeks, I think, and then we said, okay, let's first try it out. Let's pilot it in the state that we are from. So that's The state's name in India is Karnataka. That's where I am from, and all the Logistimo people were from at that point of time. So we ended up convincing the government of Karnataka for us to pilot our project. And I don't know if you guys understand, it's really hard to convince governments, even if they don't have to pay, for us to walk in and say, you know what, we want to change something the way you do things. So it's really hard, but we convinced them, and we did our first pilot in a place called Chamarajanagar. That's approximately 300 kilometers from Bangalore. So we drove there, and our plan was so we had bought the phones, we had installed our app, we had put in a SIM card for the healthcare worker to use. Plan was to go there for 2 days, train all the healthcare workers on how to use the app, and come back to Bangalore and sit and watch the data flow. But unfortunately, none of that happened. We didn't see any data for a week. So we were like, what's going on? Because we had requested the government to mandate the use of our app. And in countries like India and Africa, if the government doesn't mandate it, people don't do it. Most of the employees in healthcare setting don't even want to work. They only want to get paid. I'm sure we see a lot of that in enterprise companies here as well. So we decided we got to do something out of the box, and we ended up building a dashboard that looks like this. So we called up the district health officer and told him that we are going to install a television in his office, and the television would have what you guys are seeing. It basically shows everything to do with availability of drugs and vaccines in the district that health officer controls. And it also says who has logged in, who is the worker that hasn't been working properly, and the responsibility of the officer is to call him and make sure that he works. This had a phenomenal impact, and it brought in a lot of social change. People in healthcare setting took it as a challenge. They didn't want their name to show up on this display board saying, oh, Keshav hasn't logged in for 10 days. So that brought in a massive social change, and the adoption of our app increased. But it didn't go away with all the challenges. We had problems like, so the TV, we had put in a Bluetooth 3G dongle to the television, and somebody stole it 2 days after we had put it in. So we drove 300 kilometers again and put in another 3G dongle. But the point is, it brought in massive amounts of adoption and data for us to be able to see what is going on. So after 6 months, we were in a position to tell the government whether to hire men in public healthcare setting or women. You don't even need the data like I put there. I'm sure women are better healthcare workers, but when you have data to prove it, it's much better. So once we had a bit of success with this, we were sitting around talking about what we were going to do, and our CEO said something like, he's a supply chain wizard. He said, supply chain is always about quantity. If you look at Toyota, Nissan, all their supply chain is about quantity of something being available at some place at a given time. But in healthcare, that's not good enough. So we said, we want to revolutionize this place. So we came up with something like that. So the refrigerators you see there, it's called an ILR. Every public healthcare center has either 10 of them, or if it is a small village, it has only one. And it has all the vaccines and essential drugs that needs to be kept within certain temperatures. So once we thought, okay, let's start monitoring the temperature of these refrigerators. And within a week, we found out that there are companies like Berlinger, which is a Switzerland company, and Nextleaf. Nextleaf is a startup funded by Gates Foundation, and they were doing similar things I think they were doing in Mozambique, the same thing. So we approached Berlinger to see if they would give their devices for us for free, because we were people working with hardly any salaries to do something like this. and Berlinger was happy to give us their devices. So I worked with their engineers to decide the data exchange format from the device to a server so that we can start monitoring the temperature. So I built a Heroku server that can take data from these refrigerators, and then we will be able to do some fancy stuff with it. What you can do with that is the ability to alert the person. So every refrigerator, we tied it to a phone number. So if the fridge sends 2 consecutive threshold violation data, according to WHO, it needs to be between 2 and 8. So if it violates that, then if there are 2 consecutive readings, we'll send an alert SMS to the guy who is responsible for the refrigerator saying that it's probably the door is open. And we found out that that's most of the time that's what happens. Because when somebody comes into the hospital and says, hey, I want 10 polio vaccines, the guy opens up the refrigerator, gives the polio vaccines, forgets to close the door. And in some places in India, the temperatures are like 43, 44. So that's not great. So when the refrigerator violates the temperature, we send alert to him saying that it's probably open. And if it is not open, then he would have to call up the headquarters and say that that refrigerator is bad, so that they can then on our website say that that refrigerator stop sending alerts to it because it's broken. That means when a person does that, he or she will also move the things that are there inside it into another refrigerator. And that is massive, because when Indian government spends a lot of money in running vaccine campaigns, and if they are not effective, the government thinks that, oh, we are running the campaign, but the actual vaccines may not be good enough. So that's the benefit of monitoring temperatures. And it comes with its own challenges. You guys can see that every deployment, you would have to drive to the place where the refrigerator is. It's not like you push a button on Jenkins and something's there in Amazon. You have to drive. It has taken us, right now I think we are monitoring 9,000 refrigerators across the country, and there are still 70,000 of them left. So you have to drive to those refrigerators, install these devices, and that's when you are going to get the data. But we're getting there. So when my colleagues were trying to deploy the devices on the refrigerators, we ended up going to a state called Arunachal Pradesh, which is, you can see, is at the foothills of Himalayas. There the terrain is really, really challenging. Sometimes 60 kilometers might cost you like 3 hours, 4 hours if you're lucky. It's that kind of terrain. So when they went there, we found out something. You guys look at that picture, it will be easier for me to explain it. So what India does is, in a hard terrain place like Arunachal Pradesh, people live in catchments. So India has an amazing nurse program called ASHA. So what they do is they hire a nurse who is from that village and train her to be a nurse. And it's her responsibility to make sure that every kid that is born in the village is vaccinated, and she maintains the vaccination plan of all the children from that village. And it's a very effective program. But if you look at that, in a terrain like that, the healthcare center is always at the bottom of the hill, and the village is at the bottom of the hill, healthcare center is at the top of the hill. The lady has to walk 2 hours to get her vaccines, and then every Thursday she will run a vaccine program wherein she checks all the kids from that village. That's quite daunting. If it is snowing, she may not go. Before, if she went, she may not even have the vaccines, but we solved that problem. Then we said, we got to solve this. She should not be walking 4 hours. And we remembered we were helping Haiti government when they post-earthquake, and there was this company that was piloting unmanned aerial vehicles. I don't want to use the word drone because America does a lot of bad shit with it. So we call it UAV or unmanned air vehicle. I would love to call it unmanned air vehicle. Obviously not built by us, but when you guys look this up, it's earth-shattering. Nobody gives a shit if your DVD is late. That's what some amazing engineers have built. It's a UAV that has 20 minutes flying time, easily flies around 15 to 20 kilometers. You can put an ice box inside it and it will deliver point to point. So the idea was to pilot delivering vaccines from the healthcare center to the door of this nurse every Thursday. And she uses our phone app to say, I want this many polio vaccines, I want this many diphtheria drugs, whatever it is, the person will launch the thing and it delivers it. And we even played around with, while it's flying, it keeps sending its location to a server, and from that server, if the distance of the UAV to the nurse's place is within 5 minutes, we send an SMS to her to say that she will have her vaccines delivered to her door. So that I think we flew a couple of times, but that has massive challenges because the terrain is bad, and two, both China and Indian government have problems with a private company flying UAVs. So that's a big challenge in actually getting it done, but hopefully someday it will happen. The impact is quite obvious because we are all from technology. If Amazon can deliver DVDs with drones, you can deliver vaccines with UAVs. I think I'll now pretty much talk about all the testimonials and some of the great stories because of the impact we have had. I don't know if you can see the data that well, but so it talks about how in Karnataka our pilot accomplished a vaccine availability of 97%, and I think we couldn't measure what it was before, but I think according to Indian government or Karnataka government, it was 62%. And according to Bill Gates Foundation, 97% is great for some rural parts of America. So this is in a third world setting. And one of our proudest deployments was in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a post-war country. A lot of women get abused. So that's some data about DRC. You guys can see that soldiers there feel that if they rape a woman, they are great. That's the setting where we deployed our supply chain. WHO distributes a kit. It's called PEP kit. It has antibiotics and instructions for the abused woman to do something in the first 72 hours, and it reduces the risk of her contracting AIDS. So that's 48 women abused every hour. Now, this is the testimonial of what Logistima has done. Since 2012, 0 stockouts. That means not a single woman went to a healthcare center and went back without the PEP kit. That's phenomenal. In a setting like the DRC, that's a massive impact. Now, since we are all technology people, that's just a bit of tech data. I know it sounds ridiculous, built by 2.5 engineers. One of them is May, the other one was CTO of the organization. Half is CTO's wife. She was part-time because she had kid responsibilities and whatnot. 4 supply chain wizards, primarily Heroku, Postgres, Amazon, Redshift, Google App Engine, you name it, whatever made it work, we would use it. That was the kind of attitude we had. I put in some languages. I don't think that would be of much importance, but recent data, I didn't want, some of the data I had was quite old, so I called up the CEO and found out the recent data. It's pretty amazing. So the Indian government has agreed to roll this solution across the country. So it would be 28 states. Currently, it's rolled out to 9. There are like you guys can see how hard it is to just roll it out. So 90% adoption rate. So nobody wants to use the J2ME app. So they have discontinued the J2ME app. The only thing that is used is the Android app. So J2ME is dead. So it's primarily all Android. 1 million plus transactions a month. That's just from 9 states. And 9,000 refrigerators tracked, deployed in 4 countries: India, South Sudan, Zambia, and DRC. Primary deployment is like for all other countries, it's on Amazon. But for India, India does not want its data outside India, so it runs in a government cloud. You can see it. Currently, they are 45 plus employees. I'm going to leave you guys with 3 important numbers. That's what this entire talk is all about. Nothing else. Availability from 58% to 97%. Wastage from 35% to 5%. This is because of the monitoring of the temperatures and social tools that we have with the app. So